Hello everyone and welcome to part 4 of this video series. In this part, we'll continue building components and apply some basic styling with Tailwind CSS. Let's start by making our search component. We'll create a new file called search.js. Again, we'll make a React functional component. We'll now introduce some state. This input state will basically track the user's query, what company or stock they're looking for. We'll also have state for the best matches returned from the API. And what exactly should we initialize this to? Well, remember earlier we created a mock.js file, and inside here we have a mock search results object, which has an array of objects returned for the search endpoint. We can use this for now. So we'll import mock search results, and then use state will initialize it to mock search results dot results, which is that array of objects. Now that we've created the state, let's create some basic functions that will be useful to us later. I'll create a clear function. And this will simply set the input to an empty string and set best matches to an empty array. Next, we'll have an update best matches function. For now, we'll simply set the best matches to the mock search results.result, but later on, we'll use the fetch API to get it directly from the Finnhub API. Let's apply some styling now to this div container. We'll make it a flexbox with items positioned in the center. We'll give it vertical margins. We'll give it a border radius. We'll make it rounded. We'll give it a relative positioning. Then next we'll give it a Z50 so it has some elevation. And a width of 96. Background, we'll make it white. And we'll give it a neutral border. Border neutral 200. Great, so now we can enter some children into this component. We'll start with the input, of course. For the type, I'll give it a text. Value will be equal to the input that we've created, the input state. I'll apply some styling to this. I'll make it take the full width of the parent. Next, I'll apply some horizontal padding along with some vertical padding. I'll remove the outline when the input is focused. And again, we'll also make this rounded. We'll give it a placeholder text so it shows something when there's no text entered by the user. We'll write search stock. And for the onChange, we'll give this a function. So whenever the input changes value, we'll update the input state to have the event.target.value, and this will reflect the changes. Next, on key press, we'll also pass in a function. and we'll check if it's the enter button. If event.key is equal to enter. And if so, we'll call the update best matches function. So let's see what we have so far. If we take a look at our app, we notice that not much has changed. We don't have the search bar here, and that's simply because we didn't include it in the dashboard component. In our dashboard, we had a card component wrapping the header text. Let's replace this with a h1. For class name, we'll give it text 5XL so that it's big enough to see. And inside this, we'll give it any text we want, but basically this should be the company name. We'll also take this from the mock.js, in particular the mock company details name. So in our dashboard, let's import mock company details. And let's put the name inside here. So we'll have mock company details dot name. And now let's also include the search bar we created. Let's see what this looks like now. Great, so we have the stock name and we also have the search bar. I'll clean this up a bit by wrapping this inside a header component. So I'll cut this. Let's make a new file called header.js. Now this header component will take a prop called name. That will be the company name or stock name. And I'll replace this with an empty fragment. Now inside here, I'll have a container. So this div will contain both the stock title and the search bar. I'll replace this with a prop that's been passed in. And lastly, we'll import the search bar component. Then I'll have one little styling change. On extra large screens, I'll have a horizontal padding. One thing to note is that later on, we'll also have a theme icon inside this header component for toggling between light and dark colors. I'll comment this out for now and just leave it here as a reminder. If we go back to our dashboard, inside here, let's add the header that we just created. And we can remove this unused import. Let's make sure to pass in the prop. So name, we'll give it mock company details dot name. For this container, let's also apply a flexbox. Justify start and items center. Let's see what this looks like. Perfect, so now this is centered vertically in the middle. Let's get back to our search component. We'll first fix up a few bugs that we had. Inside the use state, we had mock search results. They shouldn't be plural. It should be .result instead. And if we scroll down, for our div class name, we had flex item center. This should instead be items center. Now we're ready to import some icons. I'll import both the X icon and the search icon from Heroicons. In particular, we should import from @Heroicons/React/solid. Let's start with the X icon. I'll wrap it inside a button. For styling, I'll give it a height of 4, width of 4, and a fill of gray 500. For the button, we'll pass in an onClick. In particular, we'll give it the clear function we made. we'll also make one minor adjustment. We'll only display this if there's an actual input in the text field. Otherwise, the X icon won't be displayed. Let's see if this works. If we take a look at our input and enter something, we can see that the X icon is only visible when there's an input text. Let's try clicking the X icon. As expected, it clears our input. Let's continue with the search icon. Once again, I'll wrap it in a button, and this time for the onClick, we'll pass in the update best matches function. For the button class name, we'll apply H8, W8, a background of indigo 600. We'll make it rounded. And we'll make it a flex box so that we can center it. We can center the children in the middle. We'll pass in justify center and item center. Lastly, we'll give it a bit of margin and some padding. Lastly, we'll style the search icon. We'll give it a height of 4, width of 4, and a fill of gray 100. Let's see if this works. We now have a search icon that's visible, as well as an X icon that appears when the user enters some text, and when we click it, it's cleared. So the next step is to make sure that the search results are actually visible when the user clicks this button. So let's create a search results component. As a prop, this will take the results array. Instead of a div, we'll return an unordered list. Let's apply some styling. We'll make this absolute positioned. Top 12. We'll give it a border. Give it a width of full. Again, we'll make it rounded. And we'll give it a height of 64. We'll also set the overflow to scroll, in particular the overflow Y. Background white. And we'll apply a neutral border. Border, neutral, 200. Inside this unordered list, we'll map over the results. And for each item, we'll return an individual list item. And in this list item, we'll populate it with the content that we want. So for this, I'll give it a key of item.symbol. Recall, if we take a look at our mock.js, each object has a description, a display symbol, a symbol, and type. The most important ones are the symbol and the description. So for our class name of the list item, I'll give this a cursor pointer padding of 4, margin of 2, and make it a flex box. Item center and justify between. rounded, and hover. When we hover, we'll change the background to make it darker. So background indigo 200. Inside this list item, we'll have a span, one for the item.symbol, and another span, in this case for the item.description. Let's use this inside our search component. We only want these search results to show if there actually is an input and if the best matches array has a length of greater than 0. So let's do that. If input and best matches dot length is greater than 0. If so, we'll render the search results. Otherwise, we'll just have null. And inside the search results, we'll pass in the prop of results, which is the best matches. Let's check this out. For our search component, if we enter some value, the search results are visible. And when we hover on top of it, it changes the background. Also, if we click the X icon, it disappears because the best matches have been set to an empty array. And this is as expected. So that's great. And also when we click this icon, it updates it again to the best matches from the mock data. This works perfectly, and we'll just add one minor revision with a custom scroll bar. Let's do that right now. For the custom scroll bar, let's head over to our index.css, and we'll create some custom classes. We'll do @layer components, and inside here create our custom classes. We'll call this custom scroll bar. And we'll reference the WebKit scroll bar. We'll give it a width of 4 pixels. We'll do the same thing for the WebKit scroll bar track and WebKit scroll bar thumb. I'll give it a background of transparent. For the thumb, I'll give it a background color. You can use any color you want, but I'll be using A5B4FC. This is a light purple color. The width, I'll give it 5 pixels, and a border radius of 10 pixels. We'll also apply a dark theme that we'll use later. So we'll just change the background color to a darker purple. Back to our search results component, let's apply this class, custom scroll bar. Let's check out how this looks. And now we have a nice looking unique scroll bar. I'll make one minor styling revision. For the X icon button, I'll apply a class name and give this a margin of 1. So now we're all done with the search component, and we can continue to other components. I'll make a minor revision to the styling of the cart component. Let's replace this background gray 300. Instead, we'll have a background of white. And we'll have a border of neutral 200. Let's see how this looks. This looks cleaner. Now let's proceed to the details component. I'll also import the card component. And instead of a div, we'll use a card as our container. First off, let's take a look at our mock data. For the mock company details, we have a lot of things, like the country, currency, exchange, market capitalization, the name, and a lot of other things. And now our details, let's create an object of the ones we want to include and how this will be formatted. So for instance, we'll call it const details list. And all the keys we'll include are the ones that we want to have inside the details. For the value, this will be how we'll format it, basically how we'll display it to the user. We'll have our name, country, we'll have the currency, we'll have the exchange, we'll have the IPO. We'll format this as IPO date. We'll have the market capitalization. And we'll have the industry. Next, I'll also make a quick method called convert million to billion. The reason we need this is because Finnhub gives us the market capitalization in millions, but it's cleaner to put it in billions so there's not as many digits. We'll simply return number over 1,000 and 2 fixed. So we only have 2 digits, 2 decimal places. And as an argument, this should take a number. Alright, so let's continue populating this card. So we'll populate it with an unordered list. Now let's apply some styling. We'll give it a full width and a full height. We'll make it a flex, but this time it'll be a flex column direction. Justify between and divide y1. What this will do is place a little line between each item inside this unordered list. So now again, let's map all the objects that we want. So in particular, let's write object.keys of our details list that we created. So for each one, we'll map over it. This will take a function. And for each one, we'll return a list item. For the list item, we'll give it a key of item. And that'll be the string, like name, country, currency, exchange, because we're mapping over all the keys in this list, or in this object rather. So now let's apply some styling to this list item. I'll give this a flex of 1 so that each list item occupies the same amount of space inside this unordered list. Now each list item will also be a flex in itself, and we'll have justify between and item center. Now in this list item itself, we'll have a span, and this will be a details list of item. So this will be how we want to format it. So basically it'll be that value. So let's say we're looking at name, it'll be formatted like this. If we're looking at IPO, it'll be formatted as IPO date. We'll also have another span, but inside of here we'll pass in details of item. And what this will be is something we pass into the component as a prop. So let's go up here and add that in. We should also check if it's the market capitalization. So if it's equal to market capitalization, then we'll apply a string literal, and inside this we'll call that function that we made convert million to billion of details item, and then we'll add a string character of b to indicate that it's billion. If it's not the market capitalization key, then we'll just simply pass in the details of item. Let's try this out in our dashboard. So here we had details inside a card. Let's now replace this with the actual details component. And what should we pass in as the details prop? Well, we can pass in the mock company details. So just a reminder again, we'll be passing in this object which has a bunch of different values like country, currency, exchange. And the difference again between this details and details list is that this is the one we're using to format which keys we want to include from that big list. Because a lot of these we don't care about. We don't care about the phone, the share outstanding. We'll exclude some of these. Let's see if this works. Perfect. So on the right side, we can see that we have the name, country, currency, exchange, IPO date, market capitalization, and industry. We can also notice that the market capitalization is formatted with billions. So this is perfect. So now we can proceed with our overview component over here. In particular, on the top left, it shows the stock symbol, such as Facebook, Apple, whatever it may be. Then it shows the current price of that stock. Next to it, it shows the currency, in this case USD. And then on the right side, it'll show the change and the change percent. So let's start coding this. Let's create our overview component. So as we mentioned, for the props, we'll pass in a symbol, we'll pass in price, change percent, and currency. We'll also import our card component. And we'll use that here instead of a div. So first and foremost, let's create a span for the symbol. For the class name, we'll give it an absolute position, left 4, top 4, text neutral 400. Then we'll give it a text large and increase this text size on bigger screens. So XL, we'll give it text XL, and 2XL, we'll give it text to Excel. Now let's move on to the other content. So I'll first make a div that can be used as a flex box. We'll make it have the full width and full height of the parent, and flex item center, but in this case it'll be justify around. Inside here we'll have two spans. The first one will be for the price and currency, and the second span will be for the change and change percent. So if I just inspect this, and I'll show you to make it more clear, we have, this is the container, the flex container, and then we have another nested container for this part and another one for this part. So for the first one, I'll give it a class name of text to Excel. On larger screens, I'll increase this. And we'll also make this a flex with items center. So inside here, we'll have the price. Along with the currency. I'll just apply some styling. And we'll also give this text neutral 400. With a margin. So now we have the price and currency. We'll move on to the change and change percent. So inside this span, I'll give it a class name, but in this case we'll pass in a template literal, and we'll see why. So first I'll pass in text large, Excel, text Excel to make it bigger on bigger screens again. But now we'll have some JavaScript inside here. And the reason being is that we'll check if the change is greater than 0. And if it is greater than 0, we'll make it green for the text, otherwise we'll make it red, just to indicate if it's a gain or a loss. It'll make it more evident. So if it's greater than 0, we'll pass in text lime 500, otherwise text red 500. So now inside this span, we can pass in the change along with the change percent. So now this component is complete. Let's go ahead and implement it in our dashboard. So let's replace this with the component overview. And let's pass in some of the props. So for symbol, I'll pass in mock company details dot ticker. Price, we can pass in whatever we want, because later it'll come from data from the API. I'll just make this 30 and change percent will be 10.0. And lastly, for the currency, I'll make it USD. Again, let's remember to import the actual component. Let's see if this works. So this looks good, we're just missing some brackets on the right side. So in our overview, for the change percent, I'll just wrap this in brackets. And this looks cleaner. We can pass in some decimals to make it more realistic, but later on the data will be much more realistic. The last part we'll do for this video is to make the ThemeIcon component that we see here on the right side. Let's make our ThemeIcon component. So instead of a div, I'll have a button. Let's apply some styling. We'll give this a rounded LG, border 1, border neutral 400, padding of 2, and an absolute positioning so that it appears on the right side of the header component. So we'll give it a right 8, and on larger screens we'll give it right 32. Lastly, we'll give it a shadow of LG. Inside this button, I'll use the moon icon from Heroicons. We could import this. For the moon icon, let's apply some styling. I'll give it H8, W8, cursor pointer, stroke 1, fill none, and stroke neutral 400. Let's apply this to our header. So here, let's uncomment this and import the ThemeIcon. Let's see how this looks. Perfect. The ThemeIcon appears on the right side of the header component, as expected. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed creating some of these components and the styling. In the next part, we'll look at creating the chart component for the stock data. In particular, this chart right here. We'll be using the Recharts library that we installed. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.